The sun dipped low over the suburban neighborhood of Ann Arbor, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. I stood at the kitchen counter, my fingers absent-mindedly tracing the rim of a chipped coffee mug. The aroma of brewing coffee filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of grass cut earlier that day. Outside, children played in the fading light, their laughter echoing against the backdrop of well-kept lawns and blooming flowers. It was a typical evening, yet I felt an unsettling void within me. My husband sat in the living room, engrossed in a game on television. He rarely noticed my presence unless I interrupted his focus. Conversations had dwindled to mundane exchanges about groceries and bills. The emotional connection we once shared seemed to evaporate with each passing year, leaving behind an unspoken distance that felt insurmountable. As I poured myself another cup of coffee, my gaze drifted to a stack of books on a nearby shelf. Among them lay an old volume I hadn't opened in years. It was a book of portraits by an artist whose work resonated with me during my youth. I reached for it, feeling its weight in my hands as memories flooded back, of late-night readings and quiet contemplation. I flipped through the pages until one particular portrait caught my eye. The subject's gaze seemed to pierce through time, evoking feelings I had long buried beneath layers of routine and responsibility. The soft brushstrokes depicted a sense of longing that mirrored my own unfulfilled desires. A sudden noise from outside broke my reverie. My stepson was home from college for the weekend. I watched him from the kitchen window as he tossed a football with friends in our front yard, his laughter mingling with theirs, a sound that felt foreign yet familiar to me now. He had grown into a young man during his time away, and there was something about him that stirred feelings I hadn't anticipated. "Dinner's ready," I called out through the open window, trying to mask the fluttering sensation in my chest. He turned towards me, his smile brightening his face as he jogged inside. "Smells good. What are we having?" "Just some pasta," I replied, forcing cheerfulness into my tone while trying to ignore the way his presence ignited something deep within me. As we sat at the dining table together, my husband engrossed in his phone and my stepson animatedly discussing college life, I felt strangely isolated even in their company. My husband barely looked up from his screen while my stepson's stories filled the air with youthful energy. A part of me longed to connect more deeply with him beyond our casual exchanges, however, guilt crept into my thoughts like an unwelcome guest. After dinner, while cleaning up, I noticed that same book lying open on the counter where I had left it earlier. The portrait seemed almost alive under the kitchen light, its gaze beckoned me closer. As if drawn by an invisible thread, I picked it up again and flipped through its pages until I found myself lost in thought once more. Later that evening, after everyone had retreated to their separate corners of our home, the living room still echoing with remnants of laughter, I found myself wandering back to where my stepson was sitting alone on the porch steps outside. He looked up as I approached, surprise flickering across his face. "Can't sleep?" he asked lightly. "Just needed some fresh air," I replied softly as we settled into an uneasy silence filled only by distant crickets chirping serenely around us. The moonlight bathed us both in silver hues as we exchanged glances that lingered just a moment too long, an unspoken understanding passing between us like electricity in the night air. It was then that something shifted within me, perhaps it was merely curiosity or something deeper stirring beneath layers of societal expectations. "I found this old book today," I said finally, breaking our silence as I gestured toward it resting inside on the table. "Oh? What's it about?" he asked casually but leaned forward slightly as if intrigued by more than just words on paper. "It's full of portraits," I replied hesitantly before adding quietly, "they evoke emotions, feelings." He nodded slowly but didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked up at me thoughtfully as if weighing his words carefully before speaking again, a pause heavy with possibilities lingering between us like uncharted territory waiting to be explored. "I get that," he said eventually, there was an earnestness behind those simple words that made my heart race unexpectedly fast against its usual rhythm, a pulse thrumming louder than any summer night could contain. The moment hung suspended in time before reality crashed back down around us like waves against rocky shores, reminding us both of boundaries set by family ties and expectations too rigidly defined by society's norms. Suddenly aware of how close we were sitting together on those porch steps, the distance narrowing imperceptibly, I stood abruptly and turned away toward safety inside where familiarity awaited amidst shadows cast by flickering lights overhead. A brief escape from whatever this was becoming between us out here under stars twinkling above like secrets whispered only among friends who dared not speak them aloud too loudly for fear someone might overhear their truths hidden beneath layers upon layers. Built over years spent navigating life together within these walls meant for comfort rather than chaos emerging unexpectedly now without warning threatening everything we knew before tonight arrived so quietly yet charged with promise lingering just beyond reach. I stepped inside but couldn't shake off what had transpired outside moments ago, the weight pressing down upon me heavier than ever before demanding acknowledgement despite all attempts made thus far at denial. I stood in the dim light of the living room, the air thick with unspoken tension. Outside, the night had turned quiet, yet my thoughts were anything but still. The porch steps felt like a threshold I had crossed, and now I was left grappling with the weight of what had transpired between us. My heart raced as I replayed that moment, how our laughter mingled with the cool evening breeze, how a simple touch ignited something deep within me. As I moved through the house, shadows danced along the walls, reflecting my inner turmoil. There was a sense of normalcy in my surroundings, but it felt foreign now. The framed photographs on the mantelpiece captured moments of happiness, family gatherings frozen in time. Yet each image felt like a reminder of what I was risking, what I could lose if this attraction continued to grow. Days passed in a blur of routine. Mornings began with coffee brewed to perfection and evenings spent watching television in silence. Yet beneath this facade lay an undercurrent of longing that refused to be ignored. Each time he entered the room, my pulse quickened, every shared glance sent shivers down my spine. The local festival approached, a vibrant event filled with laughter and music that echoed through our quiet neighborhood. It had always been a family tradition, a chance to escape from our daily lives and immerse ourselves in community spirit. This year, however, it loomed over me like a storm cloud threatening rain. On festival day, I felt an unusual excitement mixed with dread as we wandered through booths brimming with crafts and food stalls offering tempting treats. The atmosphere buzzed with energy. Children ran past us clutching cotton candy while couples strolled hand in hand beneath strings of twinkling lights. Yet amidst this joy, I felt detached, a spectator in my own life. We found ourselves at the edge of a small crowd gathered around a local band playing lively music. As we swayed to the rhythm, he leaned closer to me, his breath warm against my ear as he made some witty comment about the singer's dance moves. I laughed softly but quickly turned away to hide my flushed cheeks. The world around us faded as we shared easy conversation amidst the noise. It felt like we were cocooned in our own bubble away from prying eyes. Suddenly he reached out and brushed his fingers against mine, a fleeting touch that sent electric jolts coursing through me. My heart raced as our eyes met. There was an undeniable chemistry crackling between us. "Do you want to get something to eat?" he asked casually, though his tone hinted at something more than just food. I nodded almost instinctively, caught up in the moment without considering consequences or boundaries. We wandered away from the crowd toward quieter corners of the festival where fewer people lingered, where it felt safer to explore these new feelings that had taken root within me. As we settled on a bench near a small fountain illuminated by colorful lights reflecting off its surface, our knees brushed together unintentionally yet intentionally enough for me to feel that familiar spark again. He spoke animatedly about his favorite dishes from various stalls while I found myself lost in his enthusiasm, captivated by how alive he seemed in this setting. Then came that moment, the one that would change everything between us, A brief silence enveloped us as he turned toward me fully, his gaze penetrating yet tender. Time slowed down as we leaned closer. All thoughts of right or wrong faded into oblivion until there was only him and me. The world around us ceased to exist for those fleeting seconds. We kissed. It was soft and hesitant at first but quickly deepened into something more passionate, a culmination of pent-up emotions spilling forth like an overflowing river breaking free from its banks after years of confinement. The taste of him lingered on my lips long after we pulled apart, both exhilarated and terrified by what had just happened. "I shouldn't have done that," he murmured softly as if trying to convince himself more than me. "No," I replied breathlessly, uncertainty flooding back into reality after that momentary escape from it all. "But it felt right." He looked away then, lost in thought, as if grappling with his own internal conflict over what we'd just shared amidst laughter echoing around us from festival-goers blissfully unaware of our turmoil unfolding just beyond their reach. As dusk settled into nightfall and stars twinkled overhead like distant dreams waiting patiently for someone brave enough to chase them down, our chemistry simmered quietly beneath layers upon layers built over years spent navigating life together within these walls meant for comfort rather than chaos emerging unexpectedly now without warning threatening everything we knew before tonight arrived so quietly yet charged with promise lingering just beyond reach. Returning home felt surreal, every step toward familiarity weighed heavier than before. A reminder etched into every corner where memories lingered starkly contrasting against new desires awakening within me unbidden yet undeniable now after tasting forbidden fruit just moments ago under shimmering lights illuminating paths once thought safe, but now fraught with uncertainty ahead looming larger than ever before demanding acknowledgement despite all attempts made thus far at denial. The next few days passed slowly as my mind replayed our kiss over and over again. The thrill mixed with guilt gnawing at my insides relentlessly demanding resolution while simultaneously drawing me deeper into this emotional quagmire where boundaries blurred amid stolen glances exchanged across crowded rooms filled only partially by others, who remained oblivious witnesses unaware they were merely background noise against which our story unfolded quietly behind closed doors hidden away from prying eyes seeking solace within themselves instead. I caught myself daydreaming during mundane tasks, thoughts drifting back to him despite knowing better than allowing fantasies rooted firmly in reality take hold too tightly lest they spiral out beyond control leading nowhere good ultimately leaving nothing behind except shattered pieces scattered across paths once traveled together now forever altered irrevocably changed by choices made too hastily without foresight or consideration given toward consequences looming large ahead waiting patiently just beyond horizon's edge beckoning forth reckoning inevitable soon approaching swiftly threatening everything known until now. And then came another festival night, the air thick with anticipation once again drawing everyone out into streets filled laughter mingling sweet scents wafting past enticing everyone gathered here tonight celebrating life's simple pleasures amidst chaos swirling around them unaware still what awaited them. Hidden beneath layers upon layers built over years spent navigating life together within these walls meant for comfort rather than chaos emerging unexpectedly now without warning threatening. Everything we knew before tonight arrived so quietly yet charged with promise lingering just beyond reach. As the festival lights twinkled like stars against the night sky, I found myself caught in a web of emotions I had never anticipated. The laughter of children danced around me, blending with the sounds of music and chatter. Yet, amidst the joy surrounding us, a heaviness settled in my chest. The warmth of his presence lingered from our last encounter, an unspoken promise that hung between us like a delicate thread. We wandered through the vibrant stalls, each one filled with colorful trinkets and delicious treats. I could see him glancing at me occasionally, those fleeting looks igniting something deep within. A shared smile here, a gentle brush of hands there, each moment felt charged with an electricity I struggled to name. The world around us faded into a blur as we moved closer together, our connection deepening in ways I hadn't expected. The evening air turned cooler as we found ourselves seated at a small cafe tucked away from the festival's chaos. The dim lighting created an intimate atmosphere, allowing vulnerability to seep through the cracks of our facade. We spoke little, words seemed unnecessary as our eyes communicated volumes. I could sense his restlessness beneath the surface, mirroring my own turmoil. "Do you think they'll have fireworks later?" he asked, breaking the silence with a casual question that belied the tension simmering just beneath it. "Maybe," I replied softly, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's always so beautiful to watch them light up the sky." His gaze held mine for a moment longer than customary before he shifted in his seat. "I've always loved fireworks," he said. "They remind me of fleeting moments, how quickly they come and go." The weight of his words settled heavily on my heart. It felt like an acknowledgement of our situation. We were two people caught in a whirlwind of emotions that threatened to consume us both. As if sensing my internal struggle, he reached across the table and took my hand gently in his own. In that instant, everything else faded away, the laughter from outside, the bustling crowd, all that existed was this moment between us. Our eyes locked, and time seemed to stretch infinitely as we navigated uncharted waters together. "Sometimes," he began hesitantly, "I wonder what it would be like if things were different." A shiver ran down my spine as he spoke those words aloud. What would it be like? My heart raced at the thought, but fear gripped me tightly. We were bound by societal expectations and roles that defined us. Stepping outside those lines felt both exhilarating and terrifying. "I don't know," I replied honestly, squeezing his hand lightly as if to anchor myself amidst this storm of feelings. He leaned closer then, his breath warm against my skin, and in that moment of vulnerability and raw honesty, our lips met. The kiss was soft yet charged with unspoken longing. It felt both like an escape and a surrender to something greater than ourselves. Reality crashed back into focus almost immediately as I pulled away slightly, breathless and shaken by what had just transpired. "We shouldn't," my voice faltered as guilt surged through me like ice water. "I know," he murmured softly. "But it's hard not to want more." The weight of his admission hung in the air between us, a confession laced with desire and uncertainty that echoed my own thoughts perfectly. As we sat there in silence after that kiss, each lost in our own reflections, I couldn't help but feel a sense of inevitability creeping closer with every passing second. This connection we shared was becoming too intense to ignore. It was no longer just innocent glances or fleeting touches. It had transformed into something deeper that threatened to unravel everything around us. "Maybe we should go back," I suggested quietly after some time had passed without either of us speaking again. "It's getting late." He nodded slowly but didn't move right away. Instead, he studied me intently as if searching for answers hidden within my expression, a silent plea for understanding or perhaps reassurance that this wasn't all just fantasy. "Are you okay?" he finally asked softly. I hesitated before answering. How could I articulate what was swirling inside? "I'm fine," I replied cautiously, though doubt lingered beneath the surface, a fragile facade shielding deeper turmoil brewing within me. After what felt like an eternity spent lingering over unspoken words and stolen glances exchanged across candlelight flickering gently between us, we finally rose from our seats, reluctantly leaving behind remnants of intimacy woven into fabric surrounding us, now forever altered by choices made without foresight or consideration given toward consequences looming large ahead, waiting patiently just beyond horizon's edge, beckoning forth, reckoning inevitable, soon approaching, swiftly threatening everything known until now. As we stepped back out into the bustling street filled with laughter once more, it struck me how surreal this all felt. The contrast between joyous celebrations surrounding us while internally chaos reigned supreme, leaving scars unseen yet deeply felt echoing loudly within hearts tethered together despite all odds stacked against them. We walked side by side yet worlds apart, navigating carefully through crowds still buzzing with excitement, unaware still what awaited them hidden beneath layers upon layers built over years spent navigating life together within these walls meant for comfort rather than Chaos emerging unexpectedly now without warning, threatening everything we knew before tonight arrived, so quietly yet charged with promise lingering just beyond reach. Once home, our sanctuary from outside chaos, I could feel tension building again, thickening air around us palpable, pressing down heavily upon shoulders laden already by secrets kept too long hidden away behind closed doors designed only for safety rather than intimacy. He stood near the doorway, hesitating briefly before finally speaking up again, breaking silence stretched taut between us, now filled only by echoes reverberating off walls painted bright colors meant to inspire warmth, instead casting shadows deeper than intended, hiding truths buried far beneath surfaces polished smooth over years spent pretending everything was fine when clearly nothing truly was anymore. "What happens next?" he asked quietly, searching my eyes, desperately seeking clarity where none existed anymore, a question laden heavily with implications far beyond simple curiosity. "I don't know," came my honest reply, tinged with sadness mixed together alongside hope, wrapped tightly around uncertainty, binding tightly together feelings swirling endlessly inside, hearts yearning desperately for connection amidst isolation threatening everything known until now. And so we stood there suspended between two worlds, one filled with possibility shimmering brightly just beyond reach, while another loomed darkly overhead, casting shadows long enough to swallow whole any remnants left behind, once innocence shattered, irrevocably changed forevermore. The storm raged outside, the wind howling like a restless spirit. Rain lashed against the windows, a relentless percussion that echoed the tumult inside me. I stood in the living room, glancing at the clock, each tick amplifying the tension between us. He was supposed to leave tonight, but the weather had other plans. "Looks like you're stuck here for a while," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The air was thick with unspoken words and lingering glances that held more weight than any confession could. He nodded, his eyes searching mine for something unsaid. The flickering light from the fireplace danced across his face, illuminating the contours of his features that had become so familiar yet so foreign in this new light of understanding. I could feel my heart racing as I recalled our last moments together, a kiss that had changed everything. "I didn't expect this," he murmured, breaking the silence that had settled like a heavy blanket around us. "I thought I'd be gone by now." "Sometimes life has different plans," I replied, trying to mask the turmoil within me with a calm facade. But inside, emotions swirled chaotically, desire clashing with guilt, longing battling with fear. He stepped closer, and I felt an electric current pass between us. The boundaries we had carefully constructed began to crumble under the weight of our shared silence. My breath caught as he reached out to tuck a loose strand of hair behind my ear, a simple gesture that ignited something deep within me. The storm outside intensified, mirroring the tempest brewing in my heart. "What are we doing?" I asked suddenly, breaking free from his gaze and turning toward the window as if seeking clarity from the chaos outside. "I don't know," he admitted softly, his voice tinged with uncertainty that mirrored my own. "But it feels real." I turned back to him, feeling vulnerable yet emboldened by our shared moment of honesty. "It is real," I said quietly, knowing full well what those words implied. The truth hung heavily between us, an unspoken bond forged in secrecy and desire. As night fell deeper around us and shadows lengthened on the walls, we found ourselves gravitating toward one another once more. The storm raged on outside while inside we sought refuge in each other's presence. With each passing moment, our connection grew stronger, an undeniable pull drawing us closer together as if gravity itself conspired against our better judgment. We stood there suspended in time until instinct took over. Without thinking further about consequences or morality, we closed the distance between us. And then it happened, we spent the night together. The hours slipped away like grains of sand through an hourglass as we shared whispered secrets and stolen glances beneath dim lights flickering softly overhead. Each laugh echoed through the cozy confines of my home while raindrops tapped rhythmically against glass panes, a lullaby laced with longing and regret. Morning light crept through curtains drawn tightly closed against prying eyes, reality began to seep back into our bubble of intimacy like sunlight breaking through clouds after a storm. I stirred awake first and found him still asleep beside me, a peaceful expression gracing his features that belied everything we had crossed into together. I studied him for a moment longer than necessary before slipping out of bed quietly. Every creak of floorboards felt amplified against this newfound silence that enveloped our world, now altered irrevocably by choices made under cover of darkness. In the kitchen, coffee brewed slowly, its rich aroma filling my senses while memories from last night replayed vividly in my mind's eye like scenes from an old film reel flickering across consciousness. Laughter echoing softly against walls adorned with family photos capturing moments frozen in time. Moments now tainted by what transpired just hours earlier. As I poured 2 steaming mugs and glanced back toward where he lay still lost in slumber, my heart tugged at its seams again. A mixture of joy and despair wove itself tightly around every thought, spiraling endlessly within me. When he finally emerged from sleep's embrace moments later, his hair tousled and eyes still heavy with remnants of dreams, I couldn't help but smile despite everything weighing heavily upon us both now. Choices made without foresight or consideration for consequences looming just beyond reach. "Good morning," he said sleepily as he joined me at the table where sunlight streamed through windows illuminating shadows cast across surfaces once familiar but now transformed into something altogether different. "Morning," I replied softly before taking a sip from my cup, each taste bitter yet comforting like an old friend reminding me why I sought solace here amidst chaos swirling just beyond these 4 walls. Silence enveloped us again, the kind that spoke volumes louder than words ever could. As we sipped our drinks, cautiously aware of every glance exchanged laden with meaning unspoken yet palpable enough to fill every crevice left behind since innocence slipped away unnoticed. But reality soon intruded upon our fragile cocoon. Thoughts raced ahead toward impending decisions looming just on horizon's edge, the knowledge that soon enough life would pull us apart again, forcing confrontations long avoided. "What happens next?" he asked, finally breaking through silence thickening around us like fog rolling over hills obscuring paths once clear ahead. I hesitated before answering, knowing full well how complicated this all was becoming. "I don't know," came out instead, a truth tinged with uncertainty echoing back at me, reminding me how little control remained over anything anymore. Outside, nature continued its chaotic symphony while inside 2 hearts beat wildly beneath layers built up over years spent navigating lives intertwined yet separate, bound by ties unseen. And somewhere deep down within myself, a part yearned for freedom from constraints imposed by societal norms dictating right versus wrong, when all I truly wanted was connection forged anew amidst shadows cast long ago. The rain had finally stopped, leaving behind a damp chill that settled into the corners of the house. I stood by the window, gazing out at the glistening pavement, where droplets clung to blades of grass like tiny jewels. Each sparkle seemed to mock me, reminding me of the fleeting moments shared in the shadows. My heart raced with the weight of our secret, a burden that felt heavier with each passing day. The sound of the front door creaking open pulled me from my thoughts. My spouse had returned home earlier than expected, and panic surged through me. I quickly moved away from the window, forcing myself to adopt a casual demeanor. The last thing I wanted was for him to sense the turmoil swirling within me. "Hey," he called out, his voice echoing through the hallway. "I'm back." "Welcome home," I replied, trying to sound cheerful despite my racing heart. He stepped into the kitchen, shaking off his umbrella and hanging it by the door. "Did you have a good day?" I nodded, focusing on pouring myself a glass of water to mask my anxiety. "Just caught up on some reading." The book lay open on the coffee table where we had spent so many evenings together, but its contents felt foreign now. As he settled down at the table, I caught sight of my phone buzzing quietly beside me. A message from him flashed across the screen. "Can we talk later?" "Alone?" My heart sank at his words. The weight of our unspoken connection pressed heavily against my chest. "Everything okay?" my spouse asked, noting my distracted expression. Just, something came up, I replied evasively. The truth hung in the air like fog, thick and suffocating. He nodded and began discussing mundane details about his day, work projects and office gossip, but my mind drifted elsewhere. The laughter we once shared felt distant now, overshadowed by secrets that threatened to unravel everything we had built together. Later that evening, as darkness enveloped our home, I found myself pacing in the living room while he watched television mindlessly. Each step echoed with uncertainty as I replayed our last encounter in my mind. The warmth of his touch still lingered on my skin like an uninvited guest. I needed clarity. I needed to confront this growing attraction before it spiraled further out of control. Yet how could I explain what had unfolded between us? How could I articulate feelings that defied logic? Suddenly, a knock interrupted my thoughts, a quick rap followed by silence that sent shivers down my spine. My heart raced as I glanced toward the door. It was too late for visitors. Who could that be? He asked casually but rose to answer it nonetheless. I held my breath as he opened the door to reveal an old friend, someone who had known us both long before this mess began. Their laughter filled the air as they exchanged pleasantries outside while I stood frozen in place. "Come on in," my spouse invited warmly, unaware of how this unexpected visit threatened to expose everything lurking beneath our surface. The friend stepped inside with an easy smile but paused upon noticing my tense demeanor. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I managed to say, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. As they settled into conversation about old times and shared memories, I felt increasingly isolated within those walls, the weight of their camaraderie only deepening my internal conflict. With every laugh shared between them, a part of me longed for that simplicity again, the uncomplicated joy we once knew before everything became tangled in desire and secrecy. When their laughter faded into comfortable silence punctuated only by occasional sips from glasses filled with wine, an opportunity arose for me to steal away unnoticed, to escape into solitude where thoughts could swirl freely without judgment or scrutiny. But just as I turned toward the hallway leading away from them both, my heart pounding against my ribcage, a sudden realization struck me. If anyone discovered what lay hidden beneath layers of pretense, would they understand? Would they judge? Or worse yet, would they pity? The thought made me hesitate before retreating completely into isolation. Instead, I lingered just outside earshot while listening intently as snippets of conversation wafted toward me like whispers carried on a breeze. "Have you two considered taking a trip somewhere?" My friend's suggestion hung delicately in the air, a simple query that sent ripples through both men's expressions. "We've talked about it," he replied nonchalantly but didn't elaborate further, instead shifting focus back onto familiar topics, sports scores and upcoming events around town, all things trivial yet comforting amidst chaos brewing within me. As night deepened outside under star-speckled skies punctuated by soft moonlight spilling through windows casting shadows across walls, I faced yet another choice: remain trapped within this facade or risk revealing fragments of truth threatening to consume everything whole. Finally breaking free from eavesdropping upon their exchange, I returned with forced cheerfulness masking turmoil roiling beneath surface tension between us three, yet even as laughter echoed once more, it felt hollow somehow. Later that night when everyone finally retired for bed, I lay wide awake staring at ceiling above while thoughts spiraled endlessly around unresolved questions lingering just beyond grasp. What did tomorrow hold? How would we navigate this intricate web woven over time? And if push came to shove, what sacrifices would be made a long way forward? In those quiet hours spent alone, I couldn't help but wonder whether any path chosen would lead toward liberation or entrapment instead. Morning light filtered through curtains casting soft rays across room illuminating shadows lurking beneath surfaces where choices awaited reckoning. A reminder life continued onward regardless feelings tangled within hearts yearning for connection amidst chaos surrounding us all. The days stretched into weeks, each one marked by the weight of unspoken truths. I moved through my routine with a practiced smile, but inside, I was unraveling. The pressure of maintaining appearances gnawed at me, a constant reminder of the delicate balance I had to uphold. My spouse remained blissfully unaware, wrapped in his own world, while I waded through the murky waters of my heart. One afternoon, I found myself at a local cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the chatter around me. I sat alone, fingers tracing the rim of my cup as thoughts spiraled. My stepson's laughter echoed in my mind, a sound that had become both a balm and a torment. The way he looked at me, those fleeting glances filled with something more, haunted my every moment. I glanced around the cafe, noting couples lost in conversation and families sharing laughter. Their joy felt foreign to me now. It was a reminder of what I longed for yet couldn't grasp. As I stirred my coffee absently, I caught sight of him entering through the door. My heart raced at the mere presence of him. "Hey," he said softly as he approached my table. "Hi," I managed to reply, forcing a calmness into my voice that belied the storm within. He slid into the seat across from me, his gaze searching mine for something unspoken. "How have you been?" "Busy," I replied, avoiding his eyes as dread settled in my stomach. The truth loomed large between us, an undeniable tension that threatened to spill over. "I've been thinking about everything." His voice lowered as if afraid someone might overhear. I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" He hesitated for a moment before continuing. "About us." My breath caught in my throat. The weight of those words hung heavy in the air between us. They were both an invitation and a warning. "We shouldn't." "I know," he interrupted gently but firmly. "But it's hard to pretend nothing is happening." A silence enveloped us as we exchanged glances filled with longing and fear, two souls tangled in an impossible web of desire and consequence. "I'm leaving soon," he said suddenly, breaking our shared moment. The words struck like lightning, igniting panic within me. "What do you mean?" "A job offer came up out of state," he explained quietly. "I need to take it." A rush of emotions surged through me, fear of losing him mixed with regret for what could never be. "When?" "In a couple of weeks," he replied, his expression unreadable. I felt like time had stopped. Each second stretched painfully long as I processed his news. "You didn't tell anyone?" "No," he admitted. "It's still not official." A part of me wanted to scream, to plead with him to stay, but another part understood that this was his life to live, not mine to dictate. "I wish you would reconsider." My voice trembled slightly despite my effort to sound composed. He leaned forward slightly, eyes locking onto mine with intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "And what about us? What happens then?" The question hung heavily between us like an unacknowledged truth waiting for resolution, a truth neither of us could face directly yet could not ignore either. "We can't." My words faltered under the weight of reality pressing down on both our shoulders. His gaze softened but remained unwavering as if challenging me to confront what lay beneath our surface interactions, the feelings we had carefully tucked away in shadows until now. "Maybe we should just talk about it," he suggested gently but firmly. The suggestion sent waves crashing against my carefully constructed walls. Talking meant confronting everything we had danced around for so long. The attraction that had grown from innocent moments into something deeper and far more complicated than either of us had anticipated. "I don't know if talking will help." My voice was barely above a whisper as uncertainty washed over me like cold water on an already frayed nerve. "Why not?" He pressed gently but firmly again, his persistence unnerving yet strangely comforting amidst chaos swirling around us both. "Because it changes everything." The words burst forth before I could stop them, a floodgate opened by fear rather than clarity or courage. His expression shifted slightly, surprise mingled with understanding flickered across his features as if he finally grasped how much was at stake. Not just for him but also for me and our entire lives entangled together within this web woven from desire and secrecy alike. What if we just let things be? He proposed softly after processing my outburst, a quiet resignation settling into his tone that made my heart ache anew with longing laced tightly alongside guilt buried deep within layers upon layers built up over time spent together. Letting things be isn't an option anymore. My voice cracked slightly under pressure, emotions swirled dangerously close to spilling over like ink blotting paper left too long under water, dark stains spreading uncontrollably throughout pages once pristine now marred forevermore. Our eyes locked again, a silent battle waged between two hearts yearning yet torn apart by circumstance beyond our control. Suddenly aware how close we were physically seated across from one another, I shifted back instinctively creating distance even though every fiber within urged otherwise. He reached out tentatively placing his hand atop mine briefly before pulling away almost immediately afterward, the warmth lingering long after contact faded leaving only echoes behind. What are we doing? The question escaped his lips almost inaudibly yet resonated loudly against silence stretching taut around us both. I don't know. It came out barely above breathless whisper laced thickly with uncertainty, a confession shared between two souls caught amid storms raging outside while desperately seeking shelter from chaos swirling within. As minutes passed uneasily, I felt time slipping away faster than ever before, reality encroaching upon fantasies spun delicately throughout stolen moments shared together. Eventually rising from table reluctantly, I forced myself away from warmth radiating off presence next door, knowing full well whatever happened next would alter everything irrevocably. But parting felt unbearable nonetheless, as if leaving behind pieces left scattered across shared history written silently between breaths exchanged during stolen glances held captive beneath moonlight illuminating paths once walked together now diverging toward unknown futures ahead. With each step taken outside, I felt weight shift dramatically upon shoulders burdened by choices made thus far, unsure where paths lead next or whether they'd ever intersect again after departure loomed closer than anticipated. As dusk settled heavily overhead casting shadows longer than before, I carried remnants clinging tightly against heart aching silently beneath surface hidden deep away where no one else could see nor understand truths laid bare before only those willing enough dare tread lightly upon fragile ground beneath feet uncertain whether safe passage awaited ahead or treachery lurked nearby waiting patiently ensnare unwary travelers lost amid fog creeping ever closer shrouding hopes dreams alike veiled. Behind mist thickening slowly obscuring clarity once known now fading fast into twilight's embrace wrapping tightly around weary soul yearning desperately find solace somewhere beyond horizon stretching endlessly outward toward possibilities yet unseen waiting. Patiently just beyond reach always elusive forever tantalizingly close enough feel brush fingertips grazing lightly against edges dreams held dear while slipping slowly further away drifting quietly into night unknowns beckoning forth new adventures awaiting discovery perhaps even redemption found along winding roads traveled together or apart depending choices made henceforth leading onward toward destinies unfolding slowly revealing truths hidden deep within shadows cast long ago fading. Memories lingering softly echoing whispers calling forth courage needed face whatever comes next. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on my chest, a tangible reminder of the choices I faced. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the living room where I sat, the remnants of our earlier conversation echoing in my mind. My spouse had shared feelings that had been buried for too long, a glimpse into his own emotional isolation. It was a moment tinged with vulnerability, and yet it only deepened my internal conflict. I glanced at the book resting on the coffee table, its cover worn and familiar. The portrait inside had captivated me, pulling me into a world where unspoken desires thrived in silence. The allure of those stolen moments with my stepson danced at the edges of my thoughts. Each memory was a reminder of what could never be fully realized, a bittersweet ache that lingered like an unresolved chord. As dusk settled over Ann Arbor, I found myself wandering through the quiet suburban streets. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and distant laughter from neighbors enjoying their evening routines. I walked aimlessly, lost in contemplation. The vibrant hues of autumn painted a stark contrast to my internal turmoil. Nature's beauty felt almost mocking against my emotional disarray. Every glance at passing houses sparked memories, shared meals, laughter that felt hollow now. I recalled our last dinner together, how our eyes had lingered just a moment longer than necessary, igniting an unspoken tension that hung between us like an electric current. What are we doing? I had asked myself then, but clarity eluded me. With each step, I wrestled with my feelings for him, the warmth of his presence that ignited something deep within me versus the cold reality of our situation. A choice loomed before me, to continue down this path or to sever ties before they became irrevocably tangled. The local cafe came into view, its inviting glow beckoning me inside. I stepped through the door and settled into a corner booth, seeking refuge in a cup of coffee while I sorted through my thoughts. The barista greeted me with a smile that felt like sunshine breaking through clouds. "Your usual?" she asked. "Please," I replied absently, staring out the window as twilight deepened outside. Moments later, steam rose from the mug cradled in my hands as I took a sip, a familiar comfort amidst uncertainty. The cafe buzzed with chatter and laughter around me. Couples shared intimate conversations while friends exchanged stories filled with warmth and connection. Each sound seemed to amplify my own solitude. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through messages that felt increasingly irrelevant compared to what weighed on my heart. A notification from him flashed briefly on the screen, an innocuous question about dinner plans for later in the week, but it sent ripples through me nonetheless. Would it be our last meal together? Would we pretend everything was normal while knowing it wasn't? The thought made it difficult to breathe. As if sensing my turmoil from afar, he appeared at the cafe entrance moments later, his presence cutting through the noise like a beacon. He spotted me immediately and approached with an uncertain smile that mirrored my own inner conflict. "Hey," he said softly as he slid into the seat across from mine. "Hi," I managed to reply, feeling both relieved and apprehensive at once. For several moments, we exchanged small talk about mundane topics, the weather, upcoming events, but beneath it all lay an undercurrent of tension that neither of us could ignore any longer. "I've been thinking," he began hesitantly before trailing off as if weighing his words carefully. "What about?" My heart raced at his tone, anticipation mixed with fear coursed through me. He leaned closer as if drawing courage from proximity. "About us." The air thickened around us. Every patron faded into background noise as our world narrowed down to this moment alone, charged yet fragile. "I don't want this to end," he confessed quietly, his eyes searching mine for understanding or perhaps permission to feel what we both knew was there but had never fully acknowledged outside fleeting glances or hushed whispers. I swallowed hard against emotion rising within me, a mixture of desire and dread battling for dominance within my heart. "But what can we do? This isn't right." "Maybe it doesn't have to be wrong," he countered softly but firmly enough that his conviction struck a chord within me, a flicker of hope amidst despair. The weighty silence stretched between us until finally broken by his next words, "I'm leaving soon, for that job offer." A sharp pang pierced through me at his revelation. Time suddenly felt finite and precious all at once, a countdown ticking away, moments left unspent together while lingering regrets threatened to consume every thought thereafter. "What do you mean?" My voice barely rose above a whisper as realization dawned upon me like cold water splashing against skin, shocking yet invigorating because nothing would ever be simple again after this moment passed into memory forevermore. "I have to go," he reiterated gently but resolutely. There was no room left for negotiation now. It was merely fact laid bare before us both, wrapped tightly around threads woven intricately throughout our lives thus far, leading inevitably towards separation looming just beyond reach like shadows creeping ever closer, threatening darkness ahead unless choices were made swiftly without hesitation lest they slip away unnoticed forevermore. A parting glance exchanged held so much unsaid between us. Years compressed into mere seconds filled with longing tinged by sorrow wrapped tightly around hope still flickering faintly somewhere deep inside yearning desperately find solace even amidst chaos unfolding before us now threatening everything we'd built together thus far. You need to decide, he said finally breaking eye contact shifting focus elsewhere momentarily lost within tangled thoughts swirling endlessly around unresolved questions yet unanswered hanging heavily above us both waiting patiently for resolution only time could bring forth eventually. But time seemed cruelly indifferent tonight as darkness enveloped everything outside, the world beyond fading slowly out sight leaving only memories behind lingering softly echoing whispers calling forth courage needed face whatever comes next. The silence that enveloped us felt heavier than before, a palpable weight pressing against my chest. The shadows of our unspoken words danced in the dim light of the room, swirling around the memories we had created together. I watched him, his expression a mixture of uncertainty and resolve, as if he were bracing himself for a storm. You could stay, I suggested, my voice barely above a whisper. The thought of him leaving sent a chill down my spine. I didn't want to face the emptiness that would follow. He shook his head, his gaze now fixed on the floor. I can't. It wouldn't be right. Each word felt like a dagger, piercing through the fragile cocoon we had woven around ourselves. The reality of our situation loomed larger than ever, threatening to unravel everything. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, each second echoing in my mind like a countdown to an inevitable end. I could almost hear the murmur of the world outside, cars passing by, laughter from neighbors enjoying their evenings, while we remained trapped in this moment, suspended between desire and duty. I wish things were different, he said finally, lifting his eyes to meet mine. There was a vulnerability in his expression that tugged at something deep within me. A part of me wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap between us one last time. Me too, I replied softly. The truth hung heavily between us. It was not just about desire but about connection and understanding, things I had longed for in my life but never truly found. As he stepped closer, I felt an electric pulse between us again, a reminder of what we had shared and what was about to slip away forever. The tension crackled in the air like static electricity. It was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. But then reality crashed back in like a wave against rocks. He was leaving soon, and nothing could change that fact. You'll always have your memories, I said, trying to sound more resolute than I felt. He nodded slowly, but his eyes betrayed him. There was sadness there that mirrored my own. Memories fade, he said quietly. What we had, it's not something I can forget easily. His words hung heavy in the air as if they were both a promise and a farewell wrapped into one. My heart raced with conflicting emotions. This was our last chance to acknowledge what had been between us without pretense or fear. I'll always care about you, I managed to say through the lump forming in my throat. It felt like both an admission and an apology, a recognition of everything we couldn't have. Me too. His voice trembled slightly as if he were fighting against emotions threatening to spill over into something more profound than either of us could handle. Outside, night fell deeper over Ann Arbor. Streetlights flickered on one by one along quiet suburban streets where lives continued on unaware of our turmoil within these walls. It felt surreal. The contrast between our private chaos and the mundane world outside carrying on with its everyday rhythm. I need to go, he finally murmured after what felt like an eternity suspended in time. Each word struck me like thunder rolling across dark skies, inevitable yet deeply unsettling. Wait. In that moment, desperation surged within me as if I were grasping for something slipping through my fingers like sand. Just, don't leave things like this. He paused at the doorframe, glancing back at me with an expression that seemed torn between longing and resignation, a reflection of everything unspoken yet understood between us. I won't forget, he promised softly before stepping out into the night without looking back. The door clicked shut behind him with finality, It echoed in my mind long after he vanished into darkness beyond our home, the weight of absence settling heavily upon my shoulders as reality crashed down around me like waves eroding cliffs over time. Alone now amidst shadows cast by dim lighting overhead, memories flooded back unbidden, the laughter shared over coffee cups at cozy cafes during lazy afternoons spent together, stolen glances filled with unacknowledged longing during family dinners where silence spoke volumes louder than words ever could. And then came thoughts spiraling into panic. What would life look like without him? What would become of all those moments cherished yet tainted by guilt? I sank onto the couch where we had shared so many conversations filled with laughter tinged with something deeper beneath surface-level pleasantries. A bittersweet reminder now twisted into painful nostalgia, reminding me how fragile connections are when tethered by circumstances beyond control. The phone buzzed suddenly beside me, breaking through spirals of contemplation. Its screen lit up, revealing a message from him, an unexpected lifeline thrown amidst chaos swirling around inside me, demanding attention once more. But before I could reach for it, another notification chimed, a news alert flashing across my screen announcing an accident involving someone close to home. Panic gripped me instantly as dread settled deep within my gut, intertwining with uncertainty surrounding everything else unfolding around me right now. The world outside still moving forward while mine threatened collapse under weight carried alone. In that moment, suspended between hope and despair, came realization crashing down hard. Choices made cannot be undone easily nor forgotten lightly, and consequences linger long after decisions are rendered final. With trembling hands hovering above glowing screen displaying both messages, waiting patiently for acknowledgement, I hesitated, uncertainly caught between two paths diverging ahead, one leading toward potential healing while others spiraled downward toward unknown depths shrouded darkly behind veils obscuring clarity from view. And then silence enveloped once more, leaving only echoes reverberating through empty spaces where warmth once resided. Unanswered questions lingering heavy against heart, yearning for resolution yet knowing full well escape remains elusive despite desperate attempts, grasp fleeting moments slipping away forever.